for me, when I would come back, during the, breaks and whatnot, I would come here and I would be really filled, I'd be really, connected to my church family because, as you know, Amazing Grace is pretty small. They've known me from since I was a kid, and there's that, that bond there. But as soon as I would go back, it would feel like I had just been like spiritually stripped of, any connection, any, feeling of belonging, of community when it came to, being a Seventh-day Adventist. And so that was really difficult for me when I was away. And I remember specifically one time, there was a huge concert here at Amazing Grace. People were singing and stuff like that. And I remember that I literally had to leave in the middle of a worship, set because I had to jump on a plane to get back to, school. And so for me, that was just so representative of the fact that, I started to question, God, why am I being, why am I all the way over here, where I don't have anybody. Yes, people call at church and stuff like that, but I'm not seeing them face to face. It's kind of like the pandemic, where you're not seeing people face to face. People are dealing with their own issues, and then on top of that, the college experience and how difficult that can be, how difficult life can be as a first-generation college student, as a low-income college student, as a black female college student. All those things compiling together and then feeling stripped away. So I went through a lot of questioning of, God, why am I even here? Yes, I got into school. Yes, a way was provided for me. But if spiritually it's gonna be this hard, why would you put me in a position to, have to wrestle with my faith, have to go back and forth and have to figure out for myself what my faith was? And I think, now there's a lot of talk going on about deconstruction of your faith, and that you're really sifting through what you believe, sifting through your experience as a Christian, as an Adventist in this setting, and as someone who is a believer of Christ, and figuring out what does that mean to me, aside from the fact that I went to church my whole life, aside from the fact that, I've been involved in stuff, I've been in leadership positions and blah, 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 blah. When I was in college, and I didn't necessarily have that, I didn't have the leadership positions I had in church. I didn't have the friends and community that I was so used to. And so having to figure out for myself what exactly, how was my Christian faith going to survive being stripped away? And I think for me, it drew me closer to God. It drew me closer to Christ because I really had to hold on to him, because if I didn't, I couldn't depend on anyone else to hold me up and to lift me up in order to get me to, the end and keep my faith intact. That was all a work of God, because I couldn't depend on people. And I think that's something that everyone can relate to, that there are times where you feel like no one's thinking about you, no one has reached out, no one is, thinking about you unless they need something from you. And that's something I've struggled with a lot as, growing up in the church and being involved in the church. But I also had to realize in my experience that, God took me far away, from what I was comfortable with, what I was used to, so that he could really figure out in me and show me and demonstrate to me that really he was all that I needed.
Amen. Actually, as we were talking, I was sitting there, there were some young people that were away and are away that were not as strong and they didn't have an actual relationship with heaven itself. So once they went away, and you guys probably know people like that too, once they went away to school and they realized they weren't in that same routine of wake up, start the morning kind of thing, or Friday night worship if you were lucky you had a family, or even at your church, they broke out of that after the first semester. They probably started looking for, and that's dangerous. To me, I think that's very dangerous because it is routine. You didn't have the relationship with God, but you knew it was the right thing to do to find yourself in church on the Sabbath, even if you don't understand the Sabbath, but it's because of what you did at home. And now you go to Howard or any place, temple, wherever, it doesn't matter. And you're now trying to look for a church home. And then after that, you're like, and then you kind of break out of that same routine. So here's my thing. I see Izzy. Here's my thing. Do you think it was because I know you kept your faith, right? I think this is my theory, and I think it's a beautiful theory. Do you think that this was purposely done? Like God was like, yeah, I know you have your family. Remember, it's easy to get lost like in a big church, like a handsome place or whatever, right? But this is a smaller community. So it's family. So everybody knows it by name. But think about it, like let's say, I don't know if you, from what I know of you, I've never seen you, like even your siblings, you guys are very reserved anyway, calm. But do you think that experience of like struggling to like, just because you're just alone, that kind of helped you now that you're outside of college and prepare you ministry-wise here at the church and even maybe out on the street to say, now I'm like, I did that little struggling, I now kind of understand a little bit better certain things, like maybe I was being baby or something like that. I don't want to say baby. If you have to figure out what I'm trying to say, something, but not baby, but it was like Colin, like sheltered, maybe like a spiritual sheltering because you were here in that family and you relied on other people, but now it's like you learn how to be on your own.
Yeah, I think also in a sense that, no matter how strong your faith is, when you're in a church, like your faith is going to be tested when you're put in an environment where everything around you is not, church-centric or church-oriented. And so, like, for me, I guess that's how my experience is different. Like, I did not go to an Adventist school. I went to a private university, a university that didn't have many people that looked like me, and was known for, yes, being academically rigorous, but was known for, people just partying and just like, the theme for many people was work hard, play hard.
Did you play hard?
I don't think I played hard. That's just not in me. I'm just a very reserved person in general. But I will say that I think everyone has to go through, if your mettle is really going to be tested, if your faith is really going to be strengthened. I think one time there was someone at our church, he's an elder, he's much older, but he said that, be careful if you pray and ask God for more faith, because how do you get more faith? Your faith has to be, tested, that it has to be built up, that, whatever preconceptions and notions that you have about how the world works and how you're supposed to rely on God, on who God is, has to be broken down in order for it to be built back up again into the way that it's supposed to. And so when you're in a situation where you don't have, that sheltering, that, cushioning, that brings you to a place where you have to confront your faith. You have to confront your relationship with God. Do I truly have a relationship with God? Has this been spoon-fed to me my whole life? And do I really know God for myself? Do I believe in Him for myself? And I think that's a question, those are questions that everyone has to answer. And I think sometimes the church can be afraid to allow young people to ask those questions for themselves. But I think it's a detriment to not allow people to critically analyze their faith, critically deconstruct and sift through their faith, because ultimately your faith is not real if you haven't been allowed to do the work to be able to think, yes, I truly do believe in God, and not have any reservations about that statement. Yes, I do have a relationship with God, and not think, the only thing, not think of all the times where, you just went to church just because, You have to be given that opportunity to really question, to really sift through. And the Bible talks about that. The Bible says in Isaiah, it says, come, let us reason together. God is not asking us to coddle people and to shelter them and not allow them to ask questions and not allow them to think about, their faith and if they truly believe. God is saying, you can come to me and question me. You can question the things that you have been taught that you believe, and really sift through the scriptures, sift through the word, through life experiences, and understand if this faith is the faith for you. And I think we can't be afraid of those types of questions, because ultimately, if you come out on the other side of those questions still believing, your faith is stronger. If you don't come out on the side of those questions, the Lord may have more work to do with you, but we have to allow the Lord to do His work if you don't come out on the other side and being in the best place that you should be.
Amen. That was wonderful. Thank you again. As the mic is getting past the pedal, because pedal, you went to non-Adventist. Well, you're not Adventist, correct? Oh, no, I'm not talking. Because I thought it was like Seventh-day Church of God. First one. Oh, you have Adventist. All right, gotcha. Right before she talks, I forgot the other category, which is the music category. Last time Terrell had a little bit to say, I know he has more, but we have a lot of singers and musicians here. And we also want to represent that group of when the music stops. Like, are you just at the church playing? Do they remember you after you finish playing? Do they say, hey, come to my house for lunch? Do they say, hey, how was your week? Do they talk to you? Or they just keep pounding you with music all the time? And then as far as the singers go, the singing. Go ahead, Penny.
So for me, my experience was a little different because I was not born in an Adventist church. I was born in a Catholic family, and my mom's still Catholic, my dad's Catholic. So I was born and raised in the Catholic church until I was 11 years old. I actually did my first communion when I was 11, and then when I was 12, I got baptized into the church, right? Very reluctant on my family's side. Like that morning, I was gonna go get baptized. I literally had no reservations. It was very hard to leave my house that day, right? So for me, I found the church. I loved where I was, and I found a community. The reason I stayed was because I found a community in my church. I felt loved. I felt like there was a place for me to talk. I was very vocal. I was very, I guess present in the AY thing. I was on, literally putting programs and stuff together when I was 16. And I'm saying that because I went away to college when I was 18. I wanted to let it go away because all I know is basically Brooklyn. And it was very difficult because going upstate New York is very different from being in the city. And when I was leaving, my church made this whole scene like, oh, we're gonna call you, we're gonna send care packages, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. And I was kind of depending on their word because they've never let me down before. And I needed that because going away was very isolating. I'm kind of a person, I'm more out, I talk more now, but before I did not talk that much. I didn't like going around with a lot of people. So being in the church was very important for me. So going away to college, I would be in my dorm by myself. My roommate literally went out every night, drank. They literally put Hennessy bottles on my desk. It was that type of situation, right? So for me, it was kind of an experience of finding yourself and finding a relationship with God again. I'm not necessarily saying I'm back where I need to be because it was very, I don't know how to describe it. Coming home every day after school, you're home, you're back in your routine, but when you're in college, when you're in a dorm room, when you're around people who don't believe in the same things that you believe. So the school I went to, not a lot of people talk about religion in a favorable way, right? It's a lot of, even when you go to certain classes, it's a lot of misinformation, it's kind of misguided, and it's very hard not to absorb what they're putting into you. And having a church family was not something that I had. So I wouldn't say that the church failed. I don't know if I'm making sense right now, but I wouldn't say that the church failed me, but I am saying that I had to depend more on myself and on God than I ever did while I was home. Because there's a lot of things that I could have done, and that I had the liberty to do, but because it just didn't feel right, my spirit would, you know what I mean? I would have to leave certain places that I was in. And I'm just very thankful for the experience. It sounds bad, but when you come back and reintegrate yourself, you're like, okay, well, this is where I was and this is where I am now. And I know the only person that could get me back to where I was is God. And I think that's a beautiful thing, like Reagan said. You have to depend on Him and depend on yourself, because at the end of the day, people in the church, pastors, whoever, are still human beings and they're still sinful and you know what I mean? People have tendencies to let you down, and that's okay. So that's what I have to say about that.
Is there, before Izzy goes, I don't know anybody else that dealt, you guys told me community college-wise is the same thing, but do you have any little advice? Because remember, everybody's work is different. So do you ladies have any type of advice to help somebody as far as your testimony goes?
I would say, I'm trying to think of the best advice to give.
We can easily say, just pray about it, but it's like,
Yeah, that's not just, of course pray,
Yeah.
definitely pray. But I think you have to be open to the fact that, you know, you can make mistakes. You are not infallible, you're not the perfect human being. You know, you may have lived the quote unquote perfect Adventist life up until you went away to college and made mistakes. But that's what happens. We're not perfect human beings. We have to lean on God. So I would say that look for someone, just one mentor, somebody. I remember at my church, there was someone who consistently, called me, who even sometimes texted me. If I called her out of the blue, she would answer, and even when I would forget to respond to her text, or I wouldn't, talk for a long time, she was always there. She had daughters of her own, and she has a daughter who's away at college now. And so, to me, I think the best thing would be to just look for somebody who's either been through it before and ask them for guidance, for help, because every situation is going to be different. Every situation is going to present new challenges, and you're going to need advice for that. And I would also say too, to look for maybe someone at church that can just keep it tethered to, your church family. You may not necessarily see the church as your family, depending on where you go, depending on what experiences you've had. But if you can find one person that if you can just call out of the blue and they can help, they can give you a word of encouragement, find that person and just keep their number in your phone, try and reach out to them in hard times. But I think when you're all caught up in that, you need someone to help, yes, God, but also someone who has more maybe life experience, who's removed from the situations that you're in, who can give you some, unadulterated advice that you can really, hold on to and can use to, just get you through that process. I think going away is one of the best experiences, and that's coming from someone who, has lived in New York all my life and then went to, Tennessee for, college. I wasn't planning to go down there, but I would say it's one of the best experiences that I've had in my life. It has made me grow in so many ways. So I would never, tell people not to do it. But I would say, you have to find someone that can just give you advice when you need it, whether it be for academics, whether it be for spiritual things, and someone you can just vent to. Because sometimes, you can figure it out, you're intelligent people, I know you are. God has given us all, intelligence to work through life's challenges. But sometimes you just need to speak to someone and let those emotions out. And I think if you can find that person, you'll be set up for, at least, being able to get through. Go ahead.
What I was gonna say is, my experience is very different from hers, probably the complete opposite, because I was born in the church, raised in the church, mom, family, everybody active, and I really didn't know God at all, right? So I played Bible, I know my Bible, sometimes I had me sing the choir, all that, but I did not build any at all my relationship with God. So when I went to college, I succumbed to everything. Smoke, drink, whatever. Everything.
in New York, you didn't go away. You went
I went upstate to.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, nah, I live Mount Vernon now, so upstate is literally the next whatever.
Wait, no. Because if you say upstate,
I went to
it's
community.
UB or something.
No, like Westchester Community College.
So you went, okay, so be clear. You went to community college when you were able to go at home, or you lived?
Yeah, no, I went back home every time.
Okay, so say community. When you say upstate,
Yeah.
no, but that's community college, because like kids go to UB, like Buffalo and stuff. So if he says that he's upstate, it could be misconstrued. So make sure, because she did away. So we'll make sure we know.
Oh no, my fault. I was home. Yeah, I was home. So while I was home, there was a time, I think even before the pandemic, I stopped going to church. Not for any particular reason. It's just that my home church, even the one I'm AWOL leader at, is just in Brooklyn. You know what I'm saying? So I just stopped. And what I realized is because I stopped going to church, I lost all of my relationship with God. And I was one of those kids who you consistently had to tell, yo, keep the Sabbath. I couldn't wait till the end of the Sabbath to do what I wanted to do. And when I was faced with all the decisions in life that I had to make, I realized that I had no ground to stand on. The reason that I'm here today is because I started my walk with Jesus like last year. Like, I remember, so I have like mean anxiety, like super, super crazy anxiety when I walk. I had it for a long time before I like walked into a church building because Seventh-day Adventists be like preaching crazy about the end times. So I went to Seventh-day Adventist elementary schools, then Adventist high school, and I just ended up developing this crazy fear. And I couldn't hear sermons. They would make me like, they feel like, I felt like I was about to go like be extremely stressed out. I don't want to hear them. I used to be in church covering my ears and just like freezing out, wanting to go to sleep, wanting to go to the bathroom, everything just not to hear the sermon to escape. So what ended up happening is I was sitting on my bed one day because I couldn't sleep all night. And in the morning, I had thought about everything because, you know what I'm saying, you know when you stay up and you feel like you're about to faint just because you ain't sleeping? But I was thinking about end times, like my faith being tested. I was thinking about everything that's going to happen and be proven because I believe in God, but I really wasn't a good Christian. And I sat on the edge of my bed and I prayed for the first time. And people say, talk to Jesus like your friend. And I just opened up and had a conversation. So for her, she went and she had people call her. She had a relationship with her church. I had a relationship with my church. I didn't call nobody, I didn't talk to nobody. But for me, I literally had to face that myself because it kept getting thrown in my face. My faith kept getting thrown in my face. I was a Christian acting outside of every way. People would say, aren't you Christian or don't you go to church and all that. So for me, it was just realizing the fact that I had to make a change, or I had to choose now whether or not I wanted to follow or I wanted to leave. And I chose to stay after the action be AWOL leader because I felt like for once in my life I should say yes to God. So.
He said something about choice, and everybody was talking about choice, right? And it's funny because God is so dope because we are allowed to give the choice. We're not being forced to follow Him, right? And I always tell my friends, we always go back and forth, like the ones who don't believe in God, all this kind of stuff. And sometimes I'm not good with the other religions and stuff like that, but some of them tell me like, no, you have to do X, Y, Z, or their denomination, or whatever it is that they believe in, even if it's not really Christian and something totally different. They'll always say something like, you have to. But even though we kind of, sometimes as Adventists put God in the box to our young people, God Himself still gives us the power of choice. So it's either going to be something positive or something bad that you're going to get yourself into. But He never sits there and forces you to do X, Y, Z. So even though we keep saying there's like little rules and the church getting on our nerve, or we're raised in the church and then we still don't get it, we close our ears, we don't want to hear certain things, at the end of the day, that choice is really up to us. And I always say to someone else, I'm like, why do you want to like go through hell on earth just to not go to heaven? Like, you know, it's a real hard journey, but everybody moves a little different, right? And God understands who you are. I think I know that if you're genuinely trying your best, heaven's not going to be sitting here like and going like crazy. God understands you. And I think that's really beautiful that you were able to actually just say to yourself, let me talk to Him as a friend. Like, but I don't know if I missed it. What was the push and the urge, like, as you're a school student and trying to just...
So it was super weird. Everywhere I went, I felt like people just kept talking to me about God. Whether I was in the shop, I remember this guy, his name is Kamal, he's like my bro now. But when he went to school, he was Muslim and he was Christian. And he was split between two religions until he just ended up chasing his beliefs to see what he did, and he ended up getting down to the root. He was in this whole society he found. They researched, and he came to the conclusion that religion is fake, it doesn't exist, God don't exist, all that. And so he knows me as a Christian, and he decided to challenge me intellectually. and talk to me about things that I knew. And I know stuff about my church. Like I said, I know my Bible studying it, all that. And I couldn't defend my faith to him. So he made me think I didn't know what I was talking about. I was working at the gym. And my whole job was to make sure everybody was feeling good in the gym, make sure everybody talked. So one of the, the children of Israel's guys, you know what I'm saying, they like black Jews, he came to work out in the gym, and I'm chopping it up with him. And he made me question my faith. I was calling my brother, who's a pastor, like, what do I say and what do I do? What do I believe? I didn't even know what I believe. You know what I'm saying? So when I sat down and I said, I want to get closer to God, it was because I believed in God, but I had no faith. And so the reason I had anxiety is because I was afraid that I'm not going to be ready for heaven. I'm going to live here and be alone and be hurt and all this just for me to end my life. And I'm still going to go through it all because I believe in God. And so it's not like I can completely reject him. So it's like, I got to take my steps forward.
Anybody have something to comment or add to that before we go to the next part? Again?
I just want to say that he's doing it like one for himself instead of doing it for your family or your church or anything like that, like breaking out of that routine, kind of like you said before. So it's like, yeah, like you're instead of like, because you said that you did everything, the Bible, your brother's a pastor, all that stuff. But none of that means anything. Like you saying that you're a Seventh-day Adventist or whatever you are, or whatever leader you are, doesn't mean anything without your actual faith, your actual relationship with you and God. Not nobody else. You and your unique relationship with God.
Can you because even with Candace, imagine you're going through you start from cradle roll, you go through all the classes, then you do adventure, then you do Pathfinder, then you're doing Bible. Imagine all those different phases. And you're here, but you're not mentally here. That's what we did. I don't know, it's a time waster, it's a disconnect, but then it's like the whole
But you're doing it because they're telling you to do it. It's not your
that's
choice.
what I'm asking, because I'm about to say, you have a family of Adventists, because he represents that community. Everybody's super, super into church. Imagine they have a worship in the house, and it's just like, what are we praying about? We're praying a who?
No, but real talk, it's not even like that, but it's like, we're having worship in the house, I don't want to be there.
No, low key, when I was a kid, that's how I know about dogs. I used to read the encyclopedia. I used to fake it out because I didn't like worship with mother. I did not like worship with mother at all. It was so boring. And I was like, what is happening? What is this old school singing? If somebody explained it, but the hymns are great. Hymns are so beautiful. You guys have, for real. But the way it was presented to me growing up, in the house, in church, and stuff like that, it was like, what? So I used to love when my dad used to, because they didn't live together. So I used to love when my father would go to Hanson Place and sing the choir, because I like music. So I grew up playing the piano and organ. So I'd be like, oh shoot, Daddy don't live here, I'm gonna use that card. I'm like, and she'd be like, oh, go in your room and go sleep for worship. But then when she would go to work or do whatever that night, because she was a nurse or whatever, and I'll call my father like, yo, Daddy, I want to go to choir practice with you. But I used to really run out of worship heavy, and go read the encyclopedia about dogs.
And Carla, and this is another thing I'm gonna say to that is, sorry, hold on, I'm not gonna lie, I just had a break for it. I had something to say, they just love my mom. Facts, come back to me. That was right there. Oh, yeah, see, that's what I was gonna say. See, just found it again. But look, Carla, this is another thing too. I feel like my mom being a leader and everybody being involved was a double-edged sword for me. Because I ain't had no church community. I was at everybody's church. I was just always bouncing around. When I came back to my church, I felt like a foreigner. And nobody know me, nobody see me in 6 weeks. I went to Shiloh, all that, blah, 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 doing what I had to do. And I never had a church community. So Pathfinders, all that, I wasn't there. Singing in front, I wasn't there. People in my church barely knew me, they just see me. They're like, ooh, you my brother. I'm like, man, I go here. You know what I'm saying? So, I didn't have anything. I didn't have no connection to my church.
Wow. I get it. How do you feel now? Before we go to the next
I feel the same way, but the reason I'm on AY now is because AY leader previous there's no people my age in church now.
So what's your calling?
So I'm telling you right now, I want to rebuild these relationships, and I realize that we have to build these relationships with people, and genuine ones. Throughout my 1-year journey with God right now, I realized that you have to lead with love. Don't judge, because we all do these different things, and people are very like two-way. You one way in church, you one way outside. My whole thing is I'm going to be the same way here that I am outside. You're not going to see two of me. You feel me? And people in church are raised to be one way in church and one way on the outside, so there's a conflict on who you're going to be when you're confronted. And when I say confronted, I mean every decision you made. When somebody asks you to drink, if somebody asks you to go out tonight, you're like, Christian me or be me. There's one you. God is here with you 24/7. People think God is only here with you in the church. It's crazy. You feel me? So I just want to build these relationships with the young people. Right now, it's not that I don't care about their salvation, but I want to see how are you, because the church don't do nothing for them. You know what I'm saying? So I want to actually offer you a service. I want the church to be somewhere, and you look at it's like I get help from here. It's like from church, God don't help you, but your blessings come everywhere else but the church. Especially, I can say your mom, because everybody needs you when you sing or you dance or you speak. If you don't sing or dance or speak, they don't know what to do with you.
And then this is good because when we get to the second part of it, this is about us changing the narrative also. Because every time we have these kind of conversations, we're like, no, but the person is here, is not here. The board member's not here. But you guys have to understand too, whether no matter how old you are. It's like Izzy's saying, he's using his platform as an earbud leader to be better, right? Oh, that's right. I'm gonna ask you a question too, because you're not Adventist, but you're heavily in our church. So I'm gonna ask you something. I'm not gonna put you on the spot like that. But we're gonna get there, right? But it's good because we need to learn that Dr. Kerr said this. Pastor Kerr, before I think he's retired now, but he was the community service director for, I keep telling myself. He was the community service director for the conference. And I used to always be banging on people's doors and like, I have an idea. And that's part of how Ground Zero started too, because this is a pastor who's employed by the conference, and he's like, Crow, what's your problem? He gets so mad. And he's like, you don't need us here at the conference to go with a dream or a goal. You can pick up and start and do what you have to do. So now I just look at Sandy, this example here. You have Blue Angels. Remember, we used to give them hell. I don't know who is really invested in this youth ministries thing, but you have Catherine, well, Victoria, Victoria is, no, we're going there. Victoria is Queen's area drum now. Yeah, she's the drum coordinator, right? Right? But we knew a couple of years ago, in all the chaos, right? We knew that people were saying, remember when JD's had what, NG or whatever, and then there was the other one, Glendon, no, there was another one. That was New Genesis? Top Secret, right? And then there was also Blue Angels. And we used to, Sophia, because she was doing Pathfinder drums. I don't know what you call it, drum corps, right? And we were giving them so much help. I remember we all sat, we were in the meeting when we had sat down with the last youth director, not Lee got going before. We sat down because we were trying to see how we could bridge the gap, because people were like, Pathfinder directors were complaining. Oh, how come these young people are making up their own drum corps? And blah, blah, blah. Big complaining. Ministries was complaining, right? But they weren't trying to see, and this is not to bash anything, right? Because things happen for a reason. But they weren't trying to see how we can get together and work together and actually see what the motive was and get to the root instead of bashing. But what's funny is now, the whole world goes on a lockdown. Who you see on the TV news every time? Playing drums. You see in Blue Angels. Who are the people on social media every time we repost Blue Angels? What's this, a church? What are y'all doing? Have y'all ever took a Bible and gave a Bible study purposely, like went out and said, grab your Bible, snare players, grab your Bible, dancers, we're gonna go and give a Bible study today at City Hall? Have you ever said that? No. But them being in the presence when people were dying and having family members on ventilators, and I'm saying, these young, and they were young, that's what I'm telling you, like, if I stand at the bus stop and somebody's 90 years old saying don't smoke, I always use this example. Somebody's 90 years old and said, hey, you shouldn't smoke. But if a little girl comes and she's 4 years old and says, you shouldn't smoke, you feel bad because the little girl told you that. So now when people see our young people out there with drums, they don't see like the police department, cadets, they're seeing teenagers and young adults out there lifting their little legs and their little skin, that's some girls. You know what I'm saying? And then drums, It's colorful, it's exciting, and now guess what? That was in the Bible that they write because of how they, and even how they carry themselves. Remember when we went to Washington, D.C.? Reverently love them. And that's one thing, I'm not gonna lie. They didn't get me tight because you don't answer the phone. But one thing, I don't know what it is, but everybody in New England was really like, even if you don't like them at all, like as people, they always carry themselves right. They always do, and it's crazy because they still represent us as a church, even though they're not saying they're part of like a conference. And that's important. But anyway, all right, so let's skip down. And we were talking about church, but change the narrative. Samantha, just like, so with you now, you also represent, what is it?
People who want to win.
Going to church and then leaving the church. But give us some experience that you've had in the church. And even, give us some experiences that you had.
So once again, I'm Samantha. I was born and raised in the church. I went to the church. I was born there, for a while. My parents had me in a private school somewhere else, and then they said they wanted to have a Christian education. So I started going to the church at the age of 4. I started in 2nd grade and finished for 8th grade. And my experiences there, majorly...
The church has a school and a church. That's what she means.
It majorly declined through the years, and by the time I graduated, I felt at that point that I didn't want anything else to do with Seventh-day Adventist churches, and I just wanted to be off on my own. So,
Why? Did you say why?
No, I'm gonna say why.
Oh, okay.
And it's due to the fact that, when I went to that church, I hadn't been there for a while since I was born. I came, I thought I would find community there, but I didn't. It was like I was an outcast, in a sense. And because of that, I just didn't feel like I fit in anywhere, and I was only going there to please my parents. Going to church religiously, Friday night, come in, everything is set for Saturday, your clothes, everything, you worship, get up at 8, crack of dawn on Saturday, go to first service, second service, AY, all of that. And all of that is, it kind of boiled over to a point when I finished high school, and I told my parents, I'm not going to church anymore, I'm not going to Seventh-day Adventists, I don't want anything to do with them, I'm gonna go my own way. My parents, their ears weren't listening to myself, but more to the church. And when they were told that I was going to a high school, a Catholic high school, all girls too, in the Bronx, it was like a bomb. They were like, oh my gosh, you should never do that, it's a sin. You should not send her to a Catholic high school. But I was determined, I'm like, I'm going, I'm gonna do my high school there, and I did it. And since then, I haven't had any contact with Seventh-day Adventist churches at all, unless, Carla asked me, hey, let's go to some place, another church or something, And after a while, I started realizing, hey, there are other churches out here. There's not only just that one church, but there are other churches where you may find a sense of community. But even some churches that I went to, it still felt, because you weren't there at birth, that you were outcast, sort of sense. And I never found my way. I'm still finding myself. I'm still discovering who I am, my relationship with God. But recently I've been working at a church now, and it's not a Seventh-day Adventist church, it's a Methodist church. I've been working there as a secretary, and just hearing them, sing, reading scriptures, it brings back memories. They were just talking about their spring concert, and I was talking about, oh my gosh, I used to sing this song when I came with the choir. We went here, this where, and that where, and it's starting to resonate with me that I miss being a part of the Seventh-day Adventist church. I miss the music, I miss the singing, I miss all of that, And I think it's the one thing is because there's youth. The more youth there is, the more that you feel like you have a sense of community. But you have to find that community. Not everybody can find it with, and unfortunately that is so, but you have to find it. Because I'm telling you, I never knew about social anxiety, all of these disorders, and all of these, but I have them. Anxiety, I'm telling you, when I meet people, I do not talk to them. I'm by myself in the corner, on the phone with my friends, those who I know, those who I trust, because like you said, you can't trust everybody. And so, finding those people, and my sister, she's more outgoing than I am. And, she'll introduce me to other people, talk, and she tries, like, Samantha, get out there, talk, open up. It's just hard because you have those experiences at a young age that it makes you, as you get older, it's hard to open up. And the more hard it is to open up, the more you don't want to be with that sense of community with those people. So, you know, I'm trying to now come back to Seventh-day Adventist Church. I'm trying to find out a perfect home for me, I should say. You know, some place that I could resonate with the people, especially youth. Because I tried it, you know, with both groups and it didn't work out. But, you know,
What does both groups mean?
I mean like the older generation of the church and the youth generation. Because, you know, when I first branched out from my parents and, you know, the religion and all of that, you know, I had got my ears pierced, you know, I started wearing jewelry, and, you know, I still started coming back because my siblings were still a part of the church. You know, I didn't want them to go through the same thing I went through, you know, being an outcast on the outside, you know, and just even coming back on that, you know, immediately, you're not supposed to wear jewelry, you're not supposed to do this. I even bought my friends when I was a Pathfinder at Jamaica. You know, I brought my friends to the church, and, you know, immediately, they're like the older heads of the church, you know, they started talking about my friends. They're not a part of the church. You know, I just brought them to see what I'm part of, you know. If they want to join, if they feel like that's their calling, you know, they could join. But, you know, they felt away, and, you know, they left. And I haven't been back since, you know, so those instances just like really opened my eyes. You know, maybe this is not a faith for you right now, but maybe later on it'll be a faith for you, because right now it seems like you're following exactly what your parents want and what the church wants, not what you want. Not you, what you want as a relationship with God. I didn't have that. Remember, I just, you know, got baptized. You know, it's like I was on autoplane. I was saying yes, yes, this, that, and the third, but I wasn't actually there. It's like those instances like let me leave the church, and since then I haven't been back.
How many people got baptized because the Bible was forcing out? I didn't. I got baptized twice. The first time I got baptized is because they was, yeah, come on, you gotta go. I said, what? I don't know what's happening. And I was like, I'm closed. But the second time I got baptized was at Crusade, because Pastor Stevenson is the Bahamas of Crusade, because he was serving, I just came out of high school. And I was like, yo, this guy is so old, but he's like making sense. Like, you know, like. But you see how she's saying you have to find your community and find your people? Sometimes that's not easy for people, especially if you're an introvert. How you finding somebody if you really don't talk to people like that? You know what I'm saying? You have a problem, like not problem, but you have like a social anxiety, right? So now how can we, I guess I'm kind of combining part two in this so that we don't take long on it. But coming from you guys, I don't know if anyone experienced it, Sister McConnell, you can jump in, Pastor George, or whatever the case is. How can we now, because not, first of all, just because she named the church doesn't mean that everybody's bad at the church, right? But it's just those experiences that she had. But if there are people in a church that are sitting around or talking or whatever the case, or no, I'm sorry, in a corner by themselves, do you as a young adult say, let me change the narrative? Do you go over to the person that you've never seen before and actually just say hi? Have you guys, yeah. Oh. Why y'all holding hands? What's that?
That actually happened to me once, and the person that I did that to actually became one of my closest friends. She was just sitting in the church by herself, and I was like, hi, I'm you know, like, just sparking up conversation. I found out, you know, she's a singer, and I, like, try to utilize her where I can, you know, ask her for advice and stuff. So I would say, I don't know if I can give advice to, like, everyone.
Yeah, totally.
But, you know, like, if you're solid in your faith, like, there's literally no reason for you not to reach out to people, you know what I'm saying? Like, the Bible says reach out, you know. What is it? Go into all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father. You know, yeah. I don't really know the verse, but the point is, like, talk to people, get to know who they are, like, on a spiritual level, get to know, like, what makes them tick, like, get to know them on a really deep level, and then you can bring them to Christ, and that's a really good way to, like,
the main thing to do. Like, even if you...
No, definitely.
You know what I'm saying? Like, even if you didn't believe in God, like, if you see somebody, just say hi. Like, just say hi.
Just be nice to people.
Yeah, Mike, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Elvini, in the meantime, while she's walking.
You know, the Bible says, in order to have friends, you must show yourself friendly. So if you, and I think like, and Israel kind of touched base on this, we do not bring people to Christ. Christ brings people to Him. And our only job is to do as Christ told us to do, which is to love our neighbors as ourselves, to treat them with respect, and to act accordingly. And when you do that, that changes people. Like, people don't forget the things that you've done for them. Like, my mother always tells me, there was one day she was here, because she, my mother was an immigrant, and she came to this country and she was having a horrible day. She was ready to just pack up the bag, throw the towel in, and this white man, she was at the bus stop, and this white man came to her, and he smiled at her and said, "Good morning." That was damn near like 30 years ago. Why does my mother to this day always tell me, she said, "I don't know who that white man is, I don't know where he is in life, don't know his name." She said, "But that morning, he smiled at me and said, 'Good morning,' changed how I felt for the rest of the day." And those type of feelings are the feelings that we should be trying to give people, not worrying about telling them about the word or anything like that. No, just be nice, be friendly. When you're friendly, people will gravitate to you, they'll be interested in you. Why do you act the way that you act? Why are you so kind to people? Why are you so forgiving? Why do you have grace for people that don't deserve grace? Those are all character traits of God. So when you do those things and you move around in the world, people will naturally just be interested. And so the same way that you do that like outside in the world, the same thing you should be doing in the church. Because a lot of people, all of us, go through things that nobody knows about. I know I'm one of those people that, especially since my teen years, went through just foolishness that nobody knew about, and I was just holding it in, in myself, and I would go to church and still like be that same smiley person and stuff like that, because I realized, especially like during 2020, I realized that you don't know what people are going through. And so all that you can do is smile and wave and be friendly, ask people how they are, be very genuine and intentional with what you say and what you do with people, and pray for those people. You know how people just randomly come into your head, like during the day? You're like, oh, you don't have to speak to that person, pray for them. You don't know why God is bringing that person's name into your mind. Praying for people, all that good stuff. So don't be too worried about, people are feeling uncomfortable with approaching people and stuff like that. You just smile, you wave, tell them, I hope you're having a good day. And you go on and you leave. And God will then do that. You planted the seed for him. And all that it is that he's going to do is just do that work inside their heart for them. And that's all that we need to be worried about. So, yeah, that would be my answer to that question.
No, but that's a good answer. Because, and here's the other thing, because Samantha's saying that she wants to get back into the swing of things, right? So, Samantha wants to get back into the church itself, and she's trying to find that community that we kept talking about from school and everywhere else, right? Now, let's say Samantha was a member here at Amazing Grace, right? And then she's like, I need to branch out and find a church. Normally, we would hear the members say, no, why you want to go away, leave, stay here, don't leave. The pastor probably would say, no, why? Because you don't want to lose your member. But I remember Pastor Williams was my pastor at one point, and I went up to him, and I was so stressed, because nobody liked me, so, and I was like, everything can come, but the crazy thing is, because if I'm planning a program, like that's why I like to know the music low-key, I like to know the music ahead of time too, because the whole week, that's my meditation for the event, because normally in the event, I'm like, run around, take a picture. So, as music coordinator, even when the praise team used to send the music, even though someone sent it late, and I'm like, bro, really? But the band, like, they would encourage me, whatever. And the pastor would send, Pastor Williams was so thorough, he would send the sermon title, unless something disastrous like a 9/11 happened and he has to change it, but the sermon title, the scripture reading, and then he'll say, figure out an appeal song for this, whoever's singing, and then the praise team music, all of that would help with planning. So for me, even though I knew people just hated my guts, right, it didn't bother me on Sabbaths, like really for real, because at home, I would sit down. This is gonna be great, so don't cry, right? But I would sit home and remember specific names of people that nobody would know, would pull me to the side at the church and be like, I don't like that, right? And I don't like you. Like, they would tell me, and I'm like, nah, But I remember them and pray for them. Oh, please, I've been doing it a lot. And I would pray for them, but as I'm writing a program out, or like, and timing the sheet, or doing whatever it is, and each hymn song, it could be like the third verse of a random song that we're gonna do, and I'm like, such and such hated me so much last week. It was like, yo, I hate you, and da-da-da. And I'm like, the band has to play this note the right way, because if they don't, that person that hated me can't get that blessing. So I was always like able to put my feelings aside, but then once it was amen and it was time for lunch, then I was in my feelings. But when it was time for like ministry, I don't know, this might be like a bad thing though, but once it was time to minister, and we had to do that 11 o'clock hour, or if it was 8 or whatever it was focused. It was like, yo, game time. People have, it don't matter who like me and who don't like me. It's still heaven that somebody has to gain. So I have to remember that. But it was hell, because none of my friends wasn't in church. Because the people I'm close with, I was close to the band regardless, but I had hirings come in, but this were my friends. But my friends were at other churches ministering in other places, so I literally was like mentally alone. But it was okay, but I knew my purpose for that moment. So just to say this, like, you know, I was talking about going from church to church and finding a community. Pastor Williams said to me, he said, Carla, I understand what you're saying to me, but your salvation is so much more important than you sitting here and serving the church. And he was like, very like, my music coordinator or whatever the case is, but I can't afford for you to not make heaven because of certain things that are bothering you. So if you need to go out and visit, go visit. You understand? And I always remember him saying that, and I was like, God, you know? But it is important, and I like what you said, you know, and let's not be those people that kind of like pull us to the side and say, I hate you. Like, you know, like.
Carla, I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah.
I was gonna say something to what you just said, but really, I was gonna say a lot of people in church, and I'll say, it's like, it's not what's wrong with them. Like, it's coming from a good place, but they
That's
just
cool,
care,
yeah.
they just care if you're in the church, they really don't care about your relationship with God. And so, it's like, you really gotta be the opposite of that. I don't care if you in here.
But
as
some
long as you
people
got
don't
God
know
on
how
top.
to express it either. And that's the thing. So we shouldn't be too hard. Remember, the wheat and the tear is going to grow together. But there are some people that really don't know how to talk to people. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I mess up too. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we don't know how to talk to people, but we mean well. Or sometimes we don't. We just kind of be so quick to do the Bible study or do whatever it is, but we lack something else, and then it kind of throws us off. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was gonna say, from my personal experience, I was born and raised into my church. So as people were saying, like the lack of community, I feel like I got very lucky. I had a great community in my church. Like, no, hold on. Oh, Brooklyn Faith. I had a great community. Like the friends that I had, like I grew up with them. They're my friends to this day, and I feel like that was like one of the reasons why I stayed so long, other than my parents, because again, they would have killed me if I left. But like that was one of the reasons why I stayed. And like, as people also said, like, I wasn't really there for God in the beginning. It was more so because church was fun. Like, you would go there, you would see your friends, you go to socials, pathfinders. Like, it was a great community that I had there. And I feel like at my church also, like, I'm not gonna say we're the greatest. We're not perfect at all. But I feel like when it came to community, like, people would come to our church, we would make friends. Like, I feel like we were pretty welcoming. But it was so many people that you would see come, you would be friends, and they would go. Like, you would just grow up and lose so many people, like, constantly. But it wasn't even like I still talk to a lot of people that have left our church, but they left because of personal reasons, like they didn't fit in with like whatever was going on. But I do feel like having a community in church is very helpful. Like, it gives you a reason. It's not like the reason you should be there is God, but my reason for being there was my friends at first. But later on, I found God for myself, and the reason why I'm still here is because of that, not just because of them. But I feel like, try new places if that's the place that it works for you, because there's people out there for you, there's people out there that you will connect with.
Community is really important. That relationship with people is important. And I'm not gonna lie, I used to love people a lot, but you know what I mean, whatever, right? But I always told Dee, I admire you because you guys, from the outside looking in, you guys have that community, like, and that's one thing, like, you can say we're doing something here or anywhere. Dee and I will be like, oh, no, I gotta do this at the I gotta go to such house, and it's always a good thing to know that you can have that friend group, or even like somebody, like a young adult, that can still be there for someone that's a teenager, or like a preteen, that kind of age group, and they're like, I don't know the church business, but that's one thing I've seen over the years with kids, like, it is a beautiful thing though. Maybe not everybody was able to experience that, but when you do experience it, it's really a good thing.
Carla,
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, there's a business term for what y'all talking about. And while I was going to school for it, they said people don't stay for organizations, people stay for people. So if you're here in the church, you have to be that person, or you have to at least try to make people want to stay for you, even if they're not doing it for God. They have something here that they're attached to.
I got you. I want to, I have to, because they're going to get mad.
But it's a very important point.
Oh, somebody did that.
It's very important.
'Cause I had-
The one point that I just have to say, especially to this conversation, is that a perfect church does not exist.
Yeah.
You will never find a perfect church for you. It doesn't exist. And so I don't want, because we're talking about, finding that place for you and finding it,
Okay, I got you.
and it doesn't exist. Because at the end of the day, the church is full, we're all sinners. So yeah, it's a hospital. We all are being worked on by Christ. And we all are gonna have our issues, and there's forever gonna be people you're gonna butt heads with. There will forever be somebody saying they don't like you. There will forever be that obstacle, but you have to choose Christ for yourself. You cannot let someone else's opinion on you change your opinion on Christ. And I know a lot of people, especially today, with you thinking that church and like the community of church is not important, and that it's just my relationship with God, it's just my relationship. No, it's your relationship with God, but the church is important. That's why they talk about the church so much in the Bible. They compare it to Christ. The church is God's bride. Like that's not something we're gonna just sweep under the rug. And so while there are definitely, we're all still being worked on. We're all gonna make mistakes, and my mother always says you must leave room in your heart for forgiveness for other people. Even when they don't deserve it, even when they don't apologize, you still have to give them that forgiveness, because that's the type of forgiveness Christ gives to us. And so, while yes, I definitely encourage you to keep searching, but don't become obsessed with searching. Because at some point, if you don't put your roots down on something, you will literally float forever.
That is very true.
So you have to anchor yourself somewhere. And of course, it is our responsibility to make sure that people feel welcome. But at the same time, even if you don't feel welcome, if God is calling you someplace, and if you feel like this is where I need to be, you need to stay there. Don't become obsessed with trying to find perfection, especially on earth, because that doesn't exist.
Make sure y'all don't leave it. You can change it now. Make sure you guys don't leave it tonight either. Like, I try to fake go to BJ's and buy little snacks so you can like eat snacks and talk to somebody. No, because food brings fellowship. I don't know if chips bring fellowship, but yeah. So, but don't leave tonight and then there's somebody that you talk, like mingle with somebody. We have people, because I forgot his name. Oh, I didn't see you with the mic, give me a second. But you're the guy. Kia, what's your friend name again? Thorian? Thorian, yeah, Thorian. Wait, Thorian. So like Thorian, wait, are you Christian? I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're not Adventist though, are you? Right, but you do church or like, it's just like an Right, but well, alright, I didn't plan to do this, but I'm going to ask you, because I was going to say make sure people say hi to each other and talk whatever, but what's your view on church for somebody that's not like not in the church, so. Why'd you come? How you got here? Because this is church, so yeah. What's your story? Real quick, because I want to get to the LGBTQ part.
You put him on the spot like that.
I know, but then I just realized, I'm like, that's, yeah, listen. What'd you come here for? I can't hear him. Yes.
Originally came to support my friend because I had nothing to do at home, so I'm like, you know what? Let me try human spirit or try to, as they say, revisit, because I haven't been in church since about too many years now. I used to go to Seventh-day Adventist very briefly.
Oh, bro.
But like, I went to private school for a year and change, and then back into public school, and I haven't been fully faithful to church since. But I'll right here and there, but it doesn't hurt to try to strengthen my relationship with God. So I'm like, let me try something.
Oh, welcome. Dante, real quick, Well, I'm gonna come back to Dante. So, because Leo's gotta sing too. Yeah. So, to the week. Anyway, so here's this subject, right? Because we all might know, I know a lot, but there are many who are, and if I'm saying things wrong, tell me, because I don't, the pronoun stuff and all that, like letters, it's a lot. So this is Kevin. So a lot of us know Kevin because basically they call him, I don't know what happened to them, but no, I'm joking. So the thing is, Kevin used to be like really heavy, active, singing all up and down the place, and that's one thing, you did love doing that, you did. But Kevin also, like we said, represents that community that we are so like to talk about. But Pastor Wade and a lot of the pastors have been having roundtables like on the internet to bring this up because a lot of our members are part of the LGBTQ family. But the thing is, there's that conflict of the sin that we're calling it, and then there's also, if I am this way, because I was born and raised a certain way, I'm not supposed to do it because everybody's gonna hate me, that kind of thing. So I'm not gonna come out and tell people I am. I'm just gonna sit and struggle and be depressed and probably kill myself. Like, you know what I'm saying? But Kevin, I want you to talk to us about, currently Kevin said that he'll tell you later, but currently he said he's not in the church. Like, but I want him to share his experience, like, just tell them how you came out, in a sense. And yeah, the kids are still waiting. So, but this is my reason. But yeah, how the church responded.
Okay, so I wouldn't say I came out, right? Because I tell my friends this a lot. My mom dragged me out. So I remember it was a Saturday morning. She brought me into her room and she was just like, "Are you gay?" I was just like, "No." And then she's like, "Okay, so what are you?" And I was like, "I'm bisexual." And we had that long conversation. And then she started crying. My mom is Guyanese and Seventh-day Adventist, so it was an interesting conversation. And then I remember at the end of it, she was like, "I don't know why you thought this was so hard. You know, I would love you anyway," and all this stuff. Like, she gave me the best case scenario of acceptance, right? But then I was born in the church. I was a member of Pathfinder Club, everything. And I remember when I was keeping to myself, she only knew, my friends knew about me. And I remember one of her friends asked her about me. And she just said, "Yeah, he's bisexual." And I remember we got into a big old argument because I'm like, that's not your business to tell anyone because I don't know how that's going to affect my life outside. And I wasn't ready to like let people know. And she told me, "You gotta live your truth or you'll end up living someone else's lie." And I was like, okay. I was like, okay, look at you trying to be philosophical and everything, but I was just like, that doesn't mean anything to me. I still don't want nobody in my business. But I remember it was the 17th, because you asked me that question, of July 2019. I just posted on Facebook, and I was like, well, so I'm bisexual, yay. And I remember before this I was in Pathfinders, and the rumors about my sexuality was already just rolling around the place. And I used to be an instructor in Pathfinders, and a lot of the parents complained and did not want me sleeping in the same tents as their kids for fear of me touching their children. And I remember I literally slept in the storage tent the entire time we went out to camp. And I was fine with it, I had my own space, but it was that feeling of like, you're seeing me not as me anymore. I was born here, and it's just like, now I realized the minute I came out, I was no longer Kevin, I was Kevin the bisexual. And everything after that just went, I was no longer coming into the church a lot because everything you see here, this happened like in like 3 years. I told my mom one day, I was just like, I don't think I really want to do this anymore because it's stressing me out. I don't like being around here. I couldn't really sing. I was told that I had to end my relationship with in order for me to even like sing anymore. And I'm the type of person, if I'm made to choose between one thing or the other, if you make me choose, I'm choosing whatever you did want me to choose. And if you're going to make me choose, I have to either choose the church or my relationship. most people say, yeah, I'm gonna choose my church, but in me, it's just like, why are you making me choose this? I was bringing these people to the church, and now they don't feel comfortable because you just told them to break up with them. So it was a conflict for me. So then I stopped going, and I remember my mom was just like, do what you gotta do. I don't know if I could have really gotten to where I am now, not for my mom, because she didn't understand anything about me, and she tried, bless her heart, she tried a lot. She tried to have conversations about it. She asked her gay coworkers at work, everything. She did a lot. It was annoying sometimes, but she worked. And I told her before, recently, I told her, you're the best case scenario. You don't understand, to you it doesn't sound so hard, okay, you told people who you are. But there are programs in place that for people like me, you don't have a home, your family kicks you out, they throw you in the streets. Sometimes even like there are countries in this world, you will get killed for who you are. And people think it's like as a lightly thing, you just be who you are. That is not true. Because even like the status of coming out, I have never understood that because not a single heterosexual person in this room has ever had to come out as a straight person. No one's had to tell their family, I'm straight, by the way, no, but I must now come out to people who don't know me and give them the opportunity to decide whether or not they're going to accept me now, because I've just opened up that opportunity for them. And it's a hard thing for me. So in the church, it was, how do I juggle, you're going through hell because you like this, while also, I love music, I love to sing, I like to be in the church, and anyone who knew me, I like singing. And I no longer can do those things. I can no longer stand up in the church, especially when I got my ears pierced and I dyed my hair, got a whole mohawk. It was a lot. Like my mom said I went through like a rebellious phase, because I got my ears pierced, cut my hair differently. I used to have the same hairstyle for like 19 years. Dark season all the time. And then suddenly I went mohawk, dyed it, pierced my ears. All on the same day. And I came home, my mom's like, so what is the thought process? What is the thought process behind this? And I'm like, I don't want to be who you keep on telling me to be anymore. I just want to be whoever the heck, I'll figure it out as I'm going. And as you can see, there is no mohawk back here, so I finally figured that part out. And I came to the realization that if I wanted to protect my peace, I had to leave the church. And that was hard, because even like today, coming here, the whole day at work, my coworkers and my manager's like, what is wrong with you? And I'm like, I'm nervous. I haven't been into the church, especially this church. I haven't been here in like years. Last time I was here, I was a member. And I was texting my friend. I'm like, I am going to be talking about my sexuality in a church full of people. That should be fun. And she's like, you should be fine. I'm like, no. Because even like as I sat here and they were singing up there, I was like, I remember when I used to do that. I used to sing up there. I love music. I have a tattoo I like music. It's my thing. And that was probably like the worst feeling, is I couldn't do the thing I loved anymore because I was no longer allowed to. Of course you could sit down in the congregation and sing, but there's no feeling like being up there and leading into service. And when I went to church, I led service. I was in charge of that kind of stuff. But the minute I came out, it was, that's it. You can't do this no more. You had to sugarcoat it because they didn't want to get sued. We can't accept your sexuality up on the stage, was what I was told. And that was hard, I guess. I forget how old I was. I think I was 20 when I was told this, and I turned my back and I just left. I'm 23, so it's been a minute since I've been in a church. This is probably like the longest I've been inside of a church since I came out. And I don't know if I would say I feel better for it, because like my heart and soul has always been in the church. I was always a church boy. So I can't say I'm like for the better for it. There's definitely every Saturday when I go to work, I'm like playing gospel music on my playlist. And it's the weirdest thing, because I no longer even like see myself believing in whatever I'm listening to. But it's still that feeling when I'm playing the gospel music, or if I'm in the shower and it's Saturday, I'm just like blasting gospel music. And my mom was like, I thought you said you don't believe in it. And I'm just like, shh. My music is playing. It's just like, gospel music is my peace. It's my, what is it, like my happy place. That's the best.
So weird. You're weird.
Yeah, I know.
No, because like, I don't know if you want to jump in or whatever. Like, because listen to what you're saying, right? And I told you, you know the words, right? But he's telling us, right? He's telling us, if you hear what Kevin is saying, first of all, thank you for being honest, right? Because this is hard, like, you know. So, he's telling us that, like, yeah, I'm singing it, and whatever, I don't believe it. But it's also his happy place. Like, how contradicting is that to me right now? Like, to hear you say that, right? But then, like, the Adventist in me wants to say, train up a child in the way they should grow up, right? But there's things that we learn too, growing up, and this is not like doctrine, this is music, because music is universal. But there are things that we learned in the church growing up that you could leave the church, but 20 years later, you might still have the same friends too, or you might remember something that took place. But I find it so, I don't know, Pastor Joe, I don't know the math problem behind that, but I find it very fascinating. It's just like my grandma with dementia. It's fascinating because she can remember things that happened in 1940 something, but she can't remember what she had this morning for breakfast. So like, yeah, so like, it's like a complex thing. So like, to hear him say like, I ain't going to church anymore, but the gospel music, he didn't say rock, heavy metal, R&B, he said gospel. So I don't know if anybody is qualified, or not, this is some thing, but it's like, what does that even, Carla does not know what he just said. I don't know what this means. Does anybody understand that or have something to say about it? Janela?
First, I want to say to everyone that's up here and everyone that's shared so far, it's not an easy thing to be vulnerable, and you are very vulnerable now. So, for tonight, I don't want you to feel ashamed for sharing your story, because there's a reason why God is allowing you to do this. And He's definitely going to speak to you and say, you know what, I want you to continue being vulnerable with Him. Because at the end of the day, like you said, everyone has their own journey that they need to walk with God. We all running our own unique race, but we're going towards the same place, if that makes sense. The other point I want to make is God created all of us. So when He created mankind, He created a place in the heart that only Him can fill. So what Kevin's feeling, my sister that spoke first, my second sister, my second brother in Christ, that's you being honest and saying, listen, there's a place inside of me that God created that is calling out to Him. And no matter what type of trials I went through, no matter the type of people I faced that did not represent Christ the way that He has called me to, I'm still going to follow you. So I want to say that. God bless you for that. Don't let anyone deter you from your walk with Him. And the last thing, I would encourage everyone, even when you go home, pray for these individuals, because the devil's going to come even harder at them for sharing their testimony. And my last point is, make sure you get a mentor, right, that is truly grounded in Christ. And I want to say, study the Bible, but not to use it as a sword to cut someone down. They're studying the Bible because they want to reflect the image of Christ. They want to grow in Him. And when you have that person as your mentor, it's going to keep you focused on Christ, and wherever He takes you, don't worry about people criticizing your journey, because at the end of the day, He's trying to do something inside of you. And my last point is this. There's going to be some things when you study in the Bible that's going to rub you the wrong way, but it's meant to do that. But trust Christ in the process. Even if it's something that you don't agree with, or you don't understand, trust Christ, and He will finish the process with you.
Thank you. I do want to point this out though, because sometimes we get really angry with the church, and this is not just his comment, but if my last name is Hearwood, right? And, well, I'm a female. Let's say Keon Brown, right? Brown. Let's say Keon is Brown, right? And let's say he's dating Marie, right? If he's a Brown, Marie and him, better example, the Andersons, right? They're married, they have children. They carry the Anderson last name. If the children are behaving a certain way, that represents the family. If Emma's behaving a certain way, she represents her husband, right? If the the children decide that I'm going to do the total opposite of what the Andersons are doing, there's a conflict now because of the last name. I don't know if that makes sense, right? So, if now I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, there are things I do not believe in. If I say that I am a Seventh-day Adventist, that means I'm not going to be doing X, Y, Z. Or you might see me doing X, Y, Z, right? So when they tell you, and this goes for everybody, but when they tell you, nah, bro, you can't be up there singing because you have a... It's because as a Seventh-day Adventist, and I heard you say something about legal or something like that too. That's a big thing in our church right now, West Coast and stuff. But if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, you're carrying that name Adventist, you're going to walk and talk like an Adventist. That's what we expect. Even though none of us are that perfect, right?
Hold on, I have a question.
Hold on, right? So what happens now is, if you go up there to represent, now, it's how we execute this though, is what messes everybody up. Because especially with this fellowship and stuff, we'll get rid of the person, make them feel bad, but we don't keep up or try to explain what we mean, right? But in a perfect world, if I say, Kevin, listen, we don't condone that. To us, that's a sin in this denomination, right? So if you go up there to sing, as soon as you grab that mic and you sing that song, you're representing us. But we don't believe in that, right? So, and that goes for anything else. Does that make sense? No. Right, okay, so, yeah.
For that, I found like a weird disconnect for that, right? Because in my head, I was like what you just said, if I go up there and I sing, that's why I said I am no longer seen as Kevin.
Yeah.
I'm Kevin the bisexual. So now my sexuality is now my identity when it's not supposed to. That's what people see first. And for me, I was Kevin the singer all the way up until I became Kevin the bisexual, and I was no longer Kevin the singer. No one seemed to remember that Kevin never did anything with children before, but suddenly now he's bisexual. Keep him away from the children. It's like, that's where I didn't understand, because my sexuality is not synonymous with pedophilia. However, that's the mindset that I've seen. And even like in Zoom calls, my mother was ready to yell through the screen because that was the thing that they were teaching. They were saying we have to keep them away from the children, and they might teach the children and the gay agenda and the whole spiel. And I'm sitting in there and I'm just like, I don't care about your children. I really don't. And I really could care less about trying to convert someone to be my sexuality. I am still trying to figure out my own stuff. I really don't care. But it's that mindset. And I find it weird because most people, like for my mom, she is heavily in church. And she always, I know she has that conflict because it's just like, she's a God-fearing woman who has a son who's bisexual, and she's trying to navigate around it. And like whenever she speaks to me, she always goes, I love you. I don't care about what you are. I don't care. I love you. And even though my religion, she always says my faith says that I should condemn what you are, I, as your mother, I love you. And she will always say that to me, and that's why I always found myself, because I have a younger sister, and she is battling the faith thing, and me and my mom would have faith arguments a lot. And whenever my sister gets involved, I don't say anything, and I tell my mom, I'm not going to tell her how I feel about God. I'm not going to tell her how I feel about religion. That's for her. And I'm not going to try and sway her mind any which way, because I have to do my own journey. I didn't just wake up one day and say, yeah, I don't believe in God, I'm just going to move it. I have to figure out why. I have to see, is there a reason why I didn't want to do this? Why do I not want to go in this direction? And I didn't come to the conclusion I don't believe in God. I still believe that I believe in God. I just refused to believe in what was in the book because the book said that I shouldn't be. And I found that it's hard for me to want to be there if the church works based off the book. And I can't follow the book letter by letter because that one verse is what will be yelled at me for the rest of my life. I can't have that one verse hovering over me for the rest of my life and feel free in myself. But I can always, I will say it just out of instinct. I'll be like, oh God, or praise the Lord, or amen. I would say it in my head, and I'm like, well, who the hell am I talking to? Because again, I'm trying to figure out who is God. And the conclusion I came to is, I believe that there is someone up there that loves me. I believe that the person up there cares about me, and they have no problem with me. And that's how I move through. So whenever I'm singing a gospel song or anything, I'm not singing to whoever everyone else believes in the Bible. I'm singing to who the one I believe loves me. And I know it sounds weird when you're in the church hearing someone saying, oh, I believe in someone outside of the God in the Bible. But in my head, I believe the Bible was written by man, and God is someone totally different than what man perceives him to be. So I decided to disconnect man from God, because I found that was the weirdest thing for me.
I get what you're
Between
saying.
you and God, nobody else. Nobody else. He loves you for you. You're doing your life journey in your way. No, don't. It doesn't matter what anybody else says or what they say about you or anything like that. Because you're out here living your life, doing it. You gotta live your life. Some people out here putting on a mask every day. There's people in this room putting on a whole mask right now. Out of the things that they're doing on the low. Oh my. I'm so sorry. I'm listening to your story and like I'm almost like outraged because of how the church is sometimes. You know, when they can't even show like, oh man, like not even like sexuality. Like let's bounce to the health message, right? Somebody will get at somebody for like eating a shrimp salad and like a latte just because it has shrimp and like caffeine inside of it, right? And then you have the same SDA people. Yeah, you want to help because you eat shrimp. But then you have the same SDA people eating like deep fried, like veggie meat. You know what I mean? High in sodium, drinking a whole bunch of Kool-Aid or something sugary. You know what I mean? Just because they can eat it because it's not pork, it's not shrimp or anything like that. And they out here, they're not even exercising or nothing like that. You know what I mean? So it's just like people like to pinpoint things so much because you don't have the label. Listen, it's between you and God.
So is there a problem with how we do this fellowship, or like Emma had a strong no, right? Is there a right way? How do we? Because if you are part of the organization, right? And this is not me teaching. I'm just asking. If you're part of the organization and you don't go the same direction as what the organization is teaching, why should you be that mad? You want to be accepted. They should accept you like as a human being regardless. That is no doubt. But should we really be that mad if we're not following the same way as the group? Hold on, is it looking so? Go ahead. Well, that's a whole different topic. But if you want to, like, he didn't get, because you didn't get this fellowship. It was just sit down. You kind of like moved on yourself. So they didn't really have the board meeting, the business meeting, the whole thing. But it's an unofficial disfellowship. To me, I call it unofficial disfellowship because you're being pushed out. Yeah.
I feel like it was more like the reason behind the push out, because like I feel like when we was back then we was talking. You could be a liar and still be up there and sing. You could be a thief and still be up there and sing. You can cheat on your husband and still be up there. You can do these other things and be up there and sing. Like, but God forbid I like the same sex. You can't be up there. It's like, why? What is different? Those three sins that I just called hurt somebody else. What I did not hurt anyone. Yet I'm the one being hurt for no reason. And that's always why I found it weird. It's like the blatant hypocrisy of it all is just you pick and choose what you want to highlight and how you're just going to push that away. And when you think about it, a lot of pastors that I've come like into churches I've gone to, they never, whenever they speak about like lying or stealing or killing and stuff like that, the response in the congregation isn't as nice because there are liars and thieves in the congregation, so nobody wants to hear that. But the minute they say, and the gay man, it just, amen. Right, it's like everyone has a common enemy, and that's how they all move together. And
That's true, you know.
imagine I'm just sitting here and I'm talking about this, and suddenly I've just been targeted, and it's like, oh, okay.
So wait, but you see what he just said, right? Because I see. I have a Korean background, so I'm gonna say certain things too. But pay attention to this. He just said because of Korean background. We know that obviously you probably have a family that people still love you, but they show a little different. But you know, like, is it because of our culture? Because of the
I think it's a
Caribbeanness
mix.
too?
It's a
Because
mix.
would you get the
Yeah.
same? Would you
Because
get the
like when I
same
first
treatment down
started,
south or somewhere else?
yeah, because like when I just started, I said my mom is Guyanese and in the church, and it's a mix, and that mix is real toxic sometimes because it's like, whoa, and especially depending on like where the West Indian is in, it's like, what are you supposed to do? It's ingrained in you whether you're from the church or not. Which is for me, it's just like, I walk through my life knowing that I am disliked by a lot of people in the church, disliked by people in the West Indian people, disliked by people in my whole skin color, and then disliked by the white man. So it's just like,
You're a big minority.
I have a fight. I am literally, the intersectionality of my minority is big, and I just sit there just like, welcome to my life. It's just
Let me tell you
ridiculous.
something. Let me tell y'all something. When I'm in school for social work, right? But I'm still doing EMS, and I mentioned this a lot of times. In 2020, during all that, I remember Noreen, I forced you to come up there with me to City Hall. Remember? Let me tell you something. But it was a great day. Let me tell y'all, I learned to get closer to God through the gay community during the pandemic. It wasn't church. I asked the Federation, I'm like, yo, do we have any young adult events? Because I wasn't like, to see the COVID in front of me, and like in the beginning, we didn't know where it was coming from. So people with the gloves and the nonsense, right? I see you, George. So like, in the beginning stages of COVID, when people were trying to figure it out, we didn't even want to touch our faces. We at work were switching ambulances after each patient. And anybody that works with me and knows me, especially my they get mad at me because in my trunk, y'all see my trunk? My trunk has cleaning supplies that I brought for myself. Because I have to clean my trunk a certain way. Like, if this is a chair, I put a sheet over the chair. I have to have certain like things in the truck because I want my patients safe and I want me to be safe. I want that truck for 10 hours and sometimes 12, more than I'm in my house. So I want to be safe. But mentally, it was destroying a lot of us. I used to cry after my shifts and in my shift. I could be out there changing the oxygen tank over and over, getting mad at the nurses that everybody kept hyping up at one point. Because not all of them, but some of them were just like, I'm not helping that patient, I'm not getting sick, why the hell did you come to work? You understand? And then we're out here trying to do their job, and they got a bigger degree than me. And I was pissed off, people are dying, and we didn't have no cure, but all I could do was give you oxygen, so you could try to grab, especially if you had an asthma attack, I could not give you albuterol, because when you have the nebulizer, the air is going out. So everybody would catch it. So people were suffering. And then for me now to be like, where's the church? I always knew that we needed community and fellowship, but it really wasn't until 2020. And then when I went to City Hall, the gay people, the atheists, anybody that, I don't even say gay people, but anybody that Adventists will say, nope, this ain't it. Those are the people that made me understand God. And I don't think they even realized that. Just because of their compassion. There was more white people down in City Hall than black people. That Sabbath I went down there, there was this white girl showing me books, and Judith talking, and then they were trying to say, you're probably asexual because you're not sexual. Like they're trying to call me all kind of nigga, but just conversation, I'm asking how my day was. Because when the pandemic was going on, a couple people at church were like, oh, we prayed for you, but they told me, we forgot to put you on the list. Why'd you tell me that? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But it was like me, and once you follow the hashtag is powerful, so once you follow the hashtag on Instagram, you knew where the next meeting was and the next march. And that was community. And I'm so grateful to God for the people who we tend to shun out as a community. I cannot even explain it anymore. It's crazy. So it's funny how God works. Because it was then and there, I stood up there watching everybody. Even when Elijah came down and did the violent visual. And I said to myself, no, I owe this group of people an apology because we've been just so hard on them. And even though we don't believe in what Kevin might be saying or whatever the case is, he's still human. And the beauty of Christ being on earth, he was preaching and teaching to the Adventists that were just like him. You understand? Trying to teach them like, yo, the law, forget this law thing that you guys keep. That's why sometimes I'm like, should we really be mad at the Pharisees? Like, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, they were trained and they're doing the law, they're being the first elder, they're being the deacon, they're being that guy. But Christ himself was just like, I'm gonna still mingle. Look at the Samaritan who met the world. He was still mingling. You think he was supposed to be that close to her according to their law? And that's where like the global youth days and the compassion, like, you know, we're the hands and feet of Jesus. That's where that comes in. Because people will see you as a Bible and they'll get closer to heaven, like we were saying earlier, because of that relationship, how you get closer whatnot. George. Make sure you and Terry meet each other and Alana. That's the everybody that used to know. That's my word. I love
Okay, good night, everyone. Right, so I sat here
Hey, let's get ready.
and I'm listening, and you know, I'm thinking about it, and a lot of times what I've come to realize is that we have this notion that we have to be judge, jury, and executioner. You know, that mentality. The Bible, when I look at the Bible, a lot of times people use the Bible as a knife to cut, to cause harm, to inflict wounds or whatever. But then there's a flip side to it where the Bible is actually a knife to perform a surgery that, you know, at the end of it, you get healing. Salvation is something that a lot of us misinterpret. We believe that salvation is about preaching about the end time and the judgment and whatever. When Jesus wants us to understand that salvation is about love. Salvation is about harmony. Salvation is about telling people that there is a God that loves you beyond what you can even imagine or even comprehend. I listened to him speaking about his mom and how his mom's faith tells her that this is wrong and it is unacceptable. But then because there's this love aspect of it, she's able to look beyond whatever she thinks is wrong to know that, you know what, I love you in spite of. I believe that's how God looks at us. We all have sinned, we all have come short, we all have our difficulties, our challenges. But at the end of the day, when God looks at us, He doesn't look at us as being a liar, a thief, or whatever. He looks at us as His children who, yes, we have weaknesses, but He loves us endlessly. And when we understand this, it brings about a certain level of peace, knowing that there is somebody who is there for us in spite of, and we can rely on that person. When we have that relationship, it brings us closer to Him, and then in return, we'll understand the beauty about what salvation is all about.
Glory, like 4 times a year, and then be a 4 times a year.
I was gonna say to piggyback on both of them, what if it's like the concept of God versus humanity? Because if you preach God and say God is an unconditional and He has unconditional love, but then when you come to humanity, they try to categorize one sin is better than the other. So as Kevin said, he was a singer, he was everything good, but the minute he came out, they just castrated him as, oh, you're bisexual.
Right.
And then it's like other people say, okay, you know what, since I sit differently from you, I'm better than you, I'm worse than you. Like, what if it's like a God versus humanity?
Can somebody write that down?
Because in a sense, it's like, I'll say for an example, it's like 2 murders. One person shot someone, one person stabbed someone, and they're trying to figure out who's the more humane one. But it's like at the end of the day, both committed a crime.
Sheldon, are you hearing that? I don't know what to say after that, but I understand what he's saying. Come on. Or Pastor George. Can somebody write that down in the notes? Humanity versus God versus humanity.
Because it's like you got God's view where it's like all sin are the same, all fall short, and then you have humanity casting certain judgment on certain sins.
So this whole time y'all been talking, has just been like, I've been in my head, I've been thinking about everything y'all said, and I don't know well, right now, well, I'm not mad at the church, but I'm kind of like disgusted because this year I did some crazy things. Like, for instance, I was working at Rikers Island.
This year just started.
No, last year. It's mad short ago. I was working at Rikers Island, right? And it makes me like think, because there's some guys in there who their only attachment to God is their Bible. And when they plan to get out, they want to serve the Lord. And I'm thinking about, would they let them serve in our church? And I feel like we're in the business of sinners. I feel like everybody in this building isn't perfect, and everybody in here is serving. I don't understand. Well, I just didn't. Well, for him, like, that's crazy. I feel like if he's singing, that's more of a message to people who looking at him. That's more of a testimony that he's still here, and that we can show him love, and that he belongs with us. I feel like, I know he was just talking about showing love, but it's crazy because I don't know. It really made my heart hurt. That's crazy. I can never think about pushing you away when you're supposed to be there. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, bro. I don't know. You got me feeling things, bro.
No, it's okay to feel things, but like I was telling Kevin before, when we were out there praying and stuff, we have to make sure also, even if Kevin doesn't believe anything I'm about to say right now, those of us who still believe or are still figuring out whatever, we have to remember that if we're gonna say sin is a sin, we call it out. But you have to know how to call it out. You understand? Like, because we cannot sugarcoat it. Because if I know for me, I believe that this is a sin. But my question was also if you act out on it, is it a sin or if it's something distinct, right? But it's a sin, right?
All sin is still the same.
But this is the thing. But we have to be careful. Like, how do I say this? Like, because I don't want to say it and then it sounds weird and somebody takes it wrong. Because if I believe that this is a sin, right, that Kevin is dealing with, but Kevin, he's not going to believe anything I say because he's like, oh no, I don't believe that, or whatever, right? But if I say this is a sin, I still have the obligation to love him or whatever the case is. But I shouldn't be sugarcoated and acting as if though it's not in front of me. But it's not my job, like you said, like, it's the Holy Spirit's job to do its work.
Yeah, in fact, it's not our job to change people. It's God's job. We're just supposed to be here.
But sometimes, like, on social media, we find ourselves, like, a lot of our friends will be, like, coming out of the closet or something like that, and we're just like, good for you. When I say good for you, it's not good for you, like, yay, it's more so good for you because you're mad great. I will tell you, first of all, I watch the Again shows, big time. I love those. Because that's where I get my motivation from. My girlfriend. I was watching a little reality on YouTube, Chasing Atlanta. I'll be there. But the thing is, though, I don't think in other areas I'm as brave. I'm a very vocal and outspoken person, but sometimes I'm not as brave. So that's why I respect the community when people come out, even if they're in a place where it's kind of weird, because it's a good thing that you express yourself. But now it's like, uh-oh, so we believe it's a sin.
I feel like, think about it as like, you see how people who aren't bisexual or in my community, how they find it hard to like figure out what to say or to do around accepting someone from my community. Imagine if you were in the church and you're in my community and you spend your entire days, I learned the Bible. I was in Bible, I was singing, I was in church, I did the whole 9 yards. I did everything. I was baptized. Everything. And then suddenly I'm just like, so I'm bad. Okay. How bad am I? And then it's like, you hear about it all the time in church, and I'm like, oh, I'm that bad. Wow. Okay. And then for me, it's like, okay, I've lied before, so that's my sin on top of that one. And then if I've taken something, that's another one on top of that one. And then it's just like, I'm adding on top of it, and I'm like beating myself down because, wow, you have this big, long list of stuff. And it's a hard life to live. That's why for me, I had to break away in order to like not hurt myself anymore, because it's just like it felt like I was torturing myself at that point. But I didn't want to become, like as you said, I didn't want to be like a charity case or like we must bring him to God now type of thing. It was more like I'll get if I have to go back, I'll go back. If it's for me, I'll go back. But I don't want anyone to think like I hate the church. It wasn't that I hated the church, it was more like I didn't understand, and I'd much rather have stepped away before I developed the hatred for it. So I pulled myself back before it actually got to that place. Because like even when like I have a conversation and somehow we're like, I'm sorry that the church hurt you, I'm like, thank you. What am I supposed to do with that information? It's the number one response, because what are you supposed to tell me? And I have friends who, when I came out, it was a lot of my church friends was like, I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, are you done? Are you sure? You sure? And then my family friends were like, oh, that's nice. I got different responses, but the churches were always the most interesting ones. It was either they were openly happy for you while not so happy for you, or they were not happy for you at all and they wanted to make sure you knew. And it's weird because of the comfortability they have to voice that dislike for it. It's like you have zero problem telling me how you can't stand what I am. And like when I had a conversation with someone from my church, they got real deep into like, are you the boy or the girl in a relationship? Are you this and this? And I'm like,
No,
that?
I really want to know.
And I'm like, and for me, I sat there and I looked at her and I'm like, would you like to tell me what you do with your husband in your pastime? No? No. Right. But why is it easy for you to ask me these questions? It's because it's the norm for me to open myself up to the world while the world can close themselves off to me. And I refuse to do that anymore. So that was just for me. And while I love the church and I have a whole bunch of love for like everything that the church is and like the love that, because I don't think everybody is evil and everybody dislikes me. Because I still have friends within the church. It's just, I had to protect my peace, so I just stepped away.
So to wrap up, right? Because I don't want, like I said, I don't want you guys to like, if you can, and it's not just them up here, because everybody, we didn't even get to Keon, but it's okay, because we good. Because Keon said this, but if anybody here comes to you and they say, if somebody here comes to you and they want to talk to you like in private or something like that, unless they say something crazy. But I want it to be, don't be weird. So like, let's say if like Alana was just like, yeah, because everybody here is either like in youth ministries heavy or learning or trying to do something for themselves, and everyone's for a reason, right? But somehow connect. And same thing, like if somebody here is struggling with something too or whatever, I know all of them, so you don't have to tell me nothing. But let's say if you're going through something that like she talked about with college or the homosexuality or just trying to find a church home, somehow I want everybody here to connect with the person, with somebody. If you like are sitting down and just like, dang, I really wanna, or I feel like this, this is the time. There's not gonna be a time tomorrow, like at random, that we're all gonna be together. This is the time to like really just, can I talk to you for a second? And just communicate, exchange numbers. I don't want nobody exchanging numbers and say, hey Kevin, you're cute. It's not, no, I don't want that, right? But like a healthy situation, and like, you guys are still young. It's probably like 5 of us, probably the oldest ones in here, right? But somehow continue the conversation with each other. Make a small group. If there was, I don't have to be in it. I'm not saying for me, but like, if maybe it's 4 of y'all after this, and y'all just like, hey, like, what are we doing next? Like, you still like into church or whatever, or she's like a Friday night, she probably need worship at her house or somebody's house. Somebody should just say, hey, I'm opening my house next week. Like, a couple of y'all want to come over? We met at the Friday Night Live. Like, don't be afraid. Like, let's change that narrative. Let's bridge that gap that we've been talking about. Because all the church hurt, I've had it. You guys probably had it in little ways. They clearly had it in some ways, you know, in certain situations. Just, like, the generational curse of Christianity that it brings in the building, let's cut that. Let's cut the ties and let's, like, be better. It only takes a spark to get the fire going. Remember that song? Like, you know what I mean? Like she said, just smile at one person and it's contagious, or like it helps somebody else. It's the same thing with this now. I do want to say also that there are people that I trust that are youth leaders in here. You know what I'm saying? So like if you're looking for a church home, Amazing Grace doors is always open anyway. But there's George, there's, you know, there's people who are not cool in here. Like George gave me his car, guys. Maria and Maria and her little bad friends. George gave me his car, and I took like a million kids piled up on each other's lap just to bring to church. Some 3 boys, I didn't even know who the boys were. And like they just had a blast at Solid Rock because it was youth day. Like George is good people. Raise your hand, George. So he's not gonna give me his car. But like there are people that will really genuinely just be, and George is smart. He low-key is like a pastor, but he's playing himself. But he's good with Bible study. There's people who are really like, we don't have a lot of men. He's an AWOL leader too. But we don't have a lot of men openly out there. Maybe in your small community, your church you might have it, but I don't know. But I'm just gonna encourage you, like, let's not hate the church. Oh, Brother McCollum? Let's not hate the church though. We can dislike certain things or whatever the case is, but remember, just like Dr. Kerr said, like, you are the church. Like, you can get something done. You can start. If you're gonna sit there and grumble, but make sure you're actually trying to get something done. Change the narrative, because we clearly believe in this narrative. We clearly still believe a lot of things. And we might just not like certain things that took place, but we can do better, and we have to do better. And you guys are all old enough now to say, like, if you can make decisions on your own, to say, I don't want to wear black today, I want to wear blue, you can make a decision to make humanity better, or to make your